of President Park Geun-hye to the United States.
Robert Kelly is a professor of political science and diplomacy at Pusan National University. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Now, it's very difficult to actually interpret North Korea's movements because it's such an isolated nation. But what do you make of these latest moves?
I imagine that the missiles were withdrawn because the North realizes that it had gone a little bit too far. Both the Japanese and the South Korean response this time around has been pretty severe. The Japanese threatened to shoot down the missile, which is something they haven't done before. If they had shot down the missile, it would have been a terrible embarrassment for the North. They would have to explain what was going on. The people in North Korea would probably find out. There's a lot of information that circulates in North Korea now outside of the control of the state because there's a lot of interaction with China. So if the missile had been shot down by either the South or the North or Japan, the South or the United States or Japan, then North Koreans would have learned that, and it would have been a terrible embarrassment for the regime. So I think they kind of stepped too far this time, and they probably took a step back.
Well, let's talk about the North Koreans' military regime. It seems that it is quite a weak military unit. Why then does the international community continue to take North Korea's military threat seriously?
Yeah, the North Korean conventional military is actually significantly less fearsome, I think, than most people believe. The North Korean military is the fourth largest in the world, although that number is somewhat disputed. So it's very large, but it's also very old. It's sort of clapped out. It's built around sort of Soviet hardware from the 60s and 70s. Most people think the North Koreans would lose a conventional war rather quickly. The real issue is the nuclear tests. Right? North Korea said in this particular round of crisis that they might actually strike Washington, D.C. and the United States. That was really new. I mean, that really activated the American defense establishment in a way that it hasn't been before. So this is really being driven by the nuclear issue, really not the conventional one. You're correct.
Does this come, how much of this is a coincidence, this latest move by North Korea in terms of retracting its missiles? How much is it a coincidence that South Korean President Park is now in Washington visiting Obama?
That's actually a really good question and hard to know. My guess is it's not a coincidence. North Koreans actually don't do things very randomly. I mean, we tend to think of North Korea as sort of erratic and out of control and like the mad dogs of Pyongyang and all that. It's actually not really correct. The North Koreans are actually quite calculating. My guess is they realized that, as I said before, that the South Koreans and the Japanese were really serious this time, that if the North does something really erratic and dangerous, they really are going to hit back, and the Americans are going to give them a sort of a blank check, maybe not a blank check, but like a green light to do this. And Park going to Washington, D.C., I mean, one of the reasons why she went was basically to make sure the Americans are with her if she strikes back, because she has been drawing a pretty hard line saying if they hit us, we're going to hit them back, and, you know, it could continue to spiral. So my sense is the North Koreans probably realized they've gone a bit too far, and they're pulling back.
How much, though, do you think that the recent North Korean military posturing, how much do you think that has actually got to do with the fact that the new leader, Kim Jong-un, is actually untested and he's young? So how much was that military posturing actually for his own citizens?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I've been arguing that, in fact, for a while on this network and others, that the North Korean military is really pulling the strings behind this. The North Korean military has an inordinate place, an inordinate role in the North Korean economy and political life, and I think they're worried that the new Kim, who's only been in there for a year and a half, might be looking to restart the North Korean economy. That would mean pushing the military out of the economy a little bit, and otherwise reducing the role of the military, which became very large under the current Kim's father in the 1990s and 2000s. So my own read of this, I mean, we don't know. A lot of this is Kremlinology, but my own read of this crisis is that this was ginned up by the military to remind everyone, not just in the South and in Japan, but in North Korea too, that the military is really pulling the strings. This was a signal to Kim Jong-un not to push the military out of politics.
Professor Robert Kelly, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, police have